Welcome everybody. We got another episode of the Even Your Dynasty show. It is our, even though it's like 2 weeks at this point after we did it, but this is our 1,000 subscribers video. We got our first giveaway that's going to happen tonight. I see some people already hopping in, jumping in the comments, jumping in the chat. All you got to do to get entered, and I'll remind everyone a few times during this, but all you got to do to be entered, subscribe to the channel, drop a comment in the live chat. It will get you entered. You don't have to put any buzzwords. There's no specific word or anything that you need to put in there. You can tell us we're all idiots if you want. You can tell us our faces are all stupid if you want. I don't really care. Just feel free to put whatever you want in there, and it'll get you entered. So, what's up, guys?
Comment. It's a great one, Gran.
Comment.
Hitting.
What's up, boys? Happy to be back.
Yeah. Happy Friday. We are 2 weeks into the offseason. Buster Posey still hasn't done anything, so we should just go ahead and fire him, according to some of our fan base.
Yeah, man. Offseason started 2 weeks ago. It's a wrap. Fire him.
Yeah. Oh, God. But yeah, so we had a lot of good stuff. There was a Buster Posey interview on KNBR. I don't know, it was yesterday, 2 days ago, something like that. Posey had an interview on KNBR. I know, Ricky, you kind of mentioned, and I agree, like to a certain extent, it was a bit of a nothing burger. They can only say so much because they're not allowed to comment on opposing free agents, which I know, Ricky, you had some opinions on that because it's kind of stupid, given that we all know they're chasing probably multiple shortstops right now. But I felt like there were a lot of good nuggets from that we can take from it. So we're going to talk a little bit about that because I think he did give some hints as far as what, maybe his philosophy is going to be going forward. Obviously, he's not going to dive too deep in that. And I also felt like he did give a couple, good tidbits on some existing players that are currently on the roster. So, we'll talk a bit about that. But, anything you guys took away from that before I start ripping off some bullet points that I noticed?
I'll chime in real quick. I just wanted to further elaborate what you just said and what Ricky texted us. I think it was yesterday. There wasn't much to take away from it, but I did find it interesting how he kind of emphasized, wanting to give the younger guys an opportunity, which I think that's something that the three of us have been begging for years now. So, and I know a lot of, Giants fanatics on X were all going crazy saying, this is far on lingo 101, but thank you, Aaron, for that. Appreciate that.
Yeah.
But no, just I hope that actions speak louder than words this time, and we can actually see, some of these guys like Matos or Lucy get a legit opportunity to shine.
Yeah, that was like the first. I kind of had 2 bullet points that really jumped out early in the interview. The first one, he did mention, to have a great team, you need to have good young players to be able to have any kind of sustained success. And I think, that's an obvious one. Anybody that's watched baseball for a long time knows, like, part of being successful, like, you're not going to be able to build a whole team via free agency. That's just never going to happen. You're going to have some good young controllable talent. And I mean, I did laugh because as soon as they posted that, I saw tweets saying like, "Oh, Farhan said this for years," and I'm like, "Yeah." And then when the rubber hit the road, he didn't do anything about it. Like, he wasn't. That's his actions spoke louder than what his words were, which, that's what matters to me. So, yes, that's true. But also, he followed that, and like you said, the next thing he said was, sometimes you have to give a young player some runway and let him go and hope he finds success. And this is a guy that he witnessed it with Brandon Belt. He witnessed it with Brandon Crawford. These aren't guys that just showed up from day one and just, tore the cover off the ball. Belt in particular, he got up and down a little bit early on in his rookie year because he was really up more to cover for injuries. But they let him go in, I think, August of 2011, and they just let him play and let him go through struggles. And, he hit like 230 his first season and then came out his second season and I think he hit about 275, but he went through his ups and downs during that time frame, and they let him go. And Crawford hit 205 as a rookie, and that was not a major league bat at the time, and he developed. So I think Buster has a kind of a unique perspective on that, where he knows the value in letting guys have their opportunities and to go through the struggles and adjust back. So it was a nice takeaway, or nice thing to hear from him, I should say.
Yeah, I think my overall takeaway from the Posey interview on KNBR was just obviously with him not being able to specifically mention free agents' names, I think he's made it very clear in the last 2 times we've heard him speak that shortstop is a major priority. And I think that's reason to believe that we can't totally shut the door on a big time Adames pursuit. I think he's made that very clear. Now, of course, there's speculation that that hole might be just filled with signing Ha-Seong Kim, but we really don't know. And there's been a ton of rumors out there, especially the last few days, about them possibly being the favorites to get Adames. So I definitely think that's where they're going to start their offseason, whether it's one of those 2 guys or going out in the trade market. It doesn't seem like Posey's very content with just staying in-house at that position. So I think that's like the major takeaway from that interview. And then again, going off of what you guys were saying with the younger guys, I just feel that Posey doesn't think he's really been able to make a true evaluation of that core group of guys on the position player side with Matos, Luciano, McRae, and even Jung-Hoo Lee, who they just signed before last season. And I even heard him mention Ferrar Encarnacion as well. So I think he really wants to be able to get some kind of an evaluation himself and give those guys a fair shot rather than, a small little 20 at-bat sample size like we've seen in the last couple of seasons.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, and we're going to go through our we're going to go through kind of like a realistic offseason scenario that, I mean, it's not going to make a lot of people super happy, but I think there's a lot of logic behind it. And we'll kind of explain our rationale there. And we have a couple different scenarios that they could go if they do decide to like sign an Adames or something, which obviously that would make a lot more people happy than Kim. But either way, to me, like it would give them an opportunity, no matter what route. If they go one of those that we're going to lay out, it'll give them an opportunity to get that evaluation on a Luis Matos, on a Casey Schmidt, even possibly at second base. You'll get continued evaluation on Tyler Fitzgerald, whether he's an everyday second baseman or he's playing in a super utility Ben Zobrist type role, playing all over the field. They're going to get an idea of what they have internally before they turn their attention towards trying to fill things via trade, free agency. Now he's doubled down now where he's made the comment twice where they really need a shortstop, because Posey probably sees, just like we've said for the last several months, the Giants system at shortstop is completely barren. Like they really don't have anything above the complex league that's worth much of anything at shortstop right now, because too many guys either not enough, no bat, really good glove, or they have very questionable ability to stick it short. So it's the time, to me, and I know you guys have said it, it's the time to strike at that position, get a long-term solution, and then, figure out the rest is kind of where I'm at right now.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I showed you, I'm pretty sure you guys saw today, with John Morosi coming out and basically implying that, yeah, Mark agreed. Basically implying that the Giants might be like a front runner for Adames, which was music to both of our ears, or all 3 of our ears. So, I mean, that would be wonderful. That solidifies your left side of the infield for years to come. So, but he also did touch on that there's a bunch of other teams interested. So, I mean, we'll dive more into realistic offseason, expectations, but I mean, that's at least a good sign to hear this early.
Yeah. And it's hard because, a lot of people are making an assumption that they're unwilling to sign a guy with a qualifying offer. And I mean, I think there's a level of truth. Like, they're not going to go out and sign a Nick Pivetta or
Real quick,
Martinez.
Elaborate on that, because I saw a couple comments earlier about QOs. Can you explain to the chat?
Yeah, so the Giants are in a situation this year where if you sign a qualifying offer player because they went over the competitive balance tax in 2024, if they sign a qualifying offer or a player that was offered the qualifying offer, if they sign one of those free agents, they're going to have to lose their second and fifth round pick as well as $1 million in international bonus money. If they then proceed to sign a second player that was offered the qualifying offer, they would end up losing their third and sixth round picks as well, and then another $1 million in international bonus money. So I do believe signing two guys is off the table. I've said the only way I could see a scenario where they do that is if Soto decides, hey, I'm going to take your money, in which case, F those picks. But I don't see it happening, especially because for those of you that aren't aware, the Giants in the 2026 international class are currently have like a verbal agreement to sign Luis Hernandez from Venezuela, who is probably going to be from all reports I've seen, he's going to be like a top 3 or 5 international prospect in that signing class. So it's going to be, you don't want to do anything that could jeopardize that realistically, unless you're bringing in like some kind of superstar. So I don't foresee two, but I do think one isn't off the table, because realistically, if it's a difference-making player that you think is going to be making an impact for a long time, to me, it's worth the risk at that point.
Yeah.
So, and that's why all along, I think, as far as the qualifying offer goes, guys that they're going to covet, I think it really comes down to, assuming they don't land Soto, it really comes down to one of two between Adames and Santander. I don't see them going that far between money and the draft picks for like someone like Pete Alonso, for example. I think it really comes down to one of those two hitters. And then if you're gonna spend that many resources on a starting pitcher, you might as well go after Snell, who doesn't have the qualifying offer attached to him, like he did last year. So where Corbin Burns and Max Fried do have that qualifying offer, to me, that seems like it would be a plan C, D, or E, for the Giants. So that's kind of where I'm at. I feel like they're going to prioritize a hitter if they're going to go after somebody with a qualifying offer.
Yeah. And this is a good question, Mark. I need to look at the exact return on it, but usually they get a comp pick, and I want to say it's like the end of the third round. I would need to double check that, but I'm pretty sure it's like the team that offered it to him, if they sign elsewhere, they get a comp pick at the end of the third round or something like that. I'd have to double check that one, but I believe that's what it is for baseball.
Yes, that's correct.
And it does help with negotiations, because especially with a guy like Sean Manaea, I'm going to use him as an example. Is a team really going to give Sean Manaea some insane offer when they have to give up a second and a fifth, because the Mets did tag him with that. So I do think it helps with those players in particular. Like, hey, if this guy wants to walk, we're going to get a third round pick for him. Like, that's great. But it also is going to help us in negotiations to bring that guy back.
Yeah. At the end of the day, the QO it's like a form of leverage.
Yeah, pretty much.
And
there's a lot of guys like Adames, Soto, Burns, those guys don't care. Like teams do it just to get any compensation if that guy leaves. They get something out of it. So
yeah.
Did Sean sign? Or Catton is saying he thinks Sean signed. I don't think he did. Waka did. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think Sean has yet.
Yeah, I think you got those mixed up. Waka signed, not Manaea.
His picks go away. I think they get. Yeah, nobody gets the pick in the round, but I believe they get the comp pick. So yeah, theoretically, like some picks could disappear.
Yeah,
because of that. Yeah, it's very convoluted. Baseball has a lot of weird rules. Like last year, because they hadn't gone over the competitive balance tax a year before, when they signed Chapman, it was a second round pick and then $500,000 in bonus money. And then when they signed Snell, it was a third, but they didn't lose that second pick on each of them. But because they went over the tax last season, Now it's 2 picks and $1 million. So that's another reason why it does make sense for this team to get back under the competitive balance tax this year, because you get repeater taxes if you go over multiple years in a row. You keep these stiffer penalties for trying to, go after these qualifying offer players. I think they're probably more than, they're more than 1 year away. So they could potentially get back under the tax and have less stiff of penalties next year if they feel like they're in a spot to be super aggressive. So,
and that's why their current arbitration status is so crucial right now, because at this point, every dollar matters. And like you kind of touched on with your video the other day, Cody, if you can somehow flip like Yaz and Wade, for example, that's another 15 mil you can free up that you can put that towards, free agents this off season while remaining under the CBT. So it's, that's going to be very, very crucial, to say the least.
I think he's right on this one. I think it was Whitman.
Yeah, so there is draft pick compensation tied to the teams that are losing these players, because that's the whole reason why the Giants didn't trade Rodon that year at the deadline. A lot of us were kind of frustrated about that. And I think Farhan's argument was that you could get a better player through that draft pick compensation than you would in return in a trade, which that could be argued really both ways, honestly. It really depends on, how high level of a prospect you're getting and at what stage they are in somebody's system.
Yeah. We just don't, and we don't know, obviously, the offers he received. There might have been truth to that. He might have been getting offers where he's like, no, I'm not doing this trade. And I know a lot of us, we like Whitman. So, might end up being a really good pick by Farhan there.
Yeah.
And it's same thing with Snell this last offseason. We don't know what offers there were for him. Maybe somebody did offer something that any of us three would have been like, that you should have done that deal, but maybe they didn't. And I don't know why teams wouldn't have been interested in Snell, other than the argument was the option year, gave financial uncertainty for a team like Baltimore. But to me, it's like, you guys have plenty of money. You could have afforded that contract for another year and he would have made your team way better. So, but it's tough.
The only thing I couldn't get past with the Snell non-trade at the deadline this year was that the Marlins literally got Connor Norby, a pretty high-end prospect in the Orioles system, one of the top 5 systems in the game last year, for a total bum starting pitcher who literally got sent down to the minor leagues after like 2 to 3 starts. That's crazy. The Giants could have traded freaking Doval earlier on in the season and gotten better than that. And Norby is a solid prospect. Yeah. Like, he could have absolutely filled a hole for the Giants in the infield.
No, we were asking for that at the deadline, 3 of us.
Yeah. So I was like, they traded him. They traded the Marlins traded the Orioles the worst of the Rogers brothers and got Connor Norby back. I'm like, you couldn't have traded one of ours. Like, come on, guys, we got 2 of them. Yeah. Send one of those guys there. It's just, no, it is bad. But another couple takeaways I had from the Posey interview. One of them was, they asked him how aggressive he's going to be via trade, because that is kind of something the Giants have done historically. He kind of gave a nothing answer really, but he did just say like they want to be aggressive, but they're not going to be reckless or careless, whatever the word was that he used. I do think we can expect the Giants to be a little more aggressive with trades with Manassian as a GM. It's just, that's a guy with a history wherever he's been, like especially in Milwaukee, like they were super aggressive making trades. And I think that's a guy that we've talked in the past about it. He's going to have a really good understanding of the value of his players as well as players around the league. And I don't think he'll hesitate to tell Buster like they should be doing a move if he feels like they're getting the better end of it. So I think we're going to see more trades from him. And the last one, the last note I mentioned, or I wrote down, he did make a couple comments about different players. Most of them were kind of, nothing answers. Like he said with Ramos, like, I love his bat path. I feel like there's a lot of hits there because it's the inside out. And Matos does a good job barreling balls, but the one guy that he kind of lit up talking about was Grant McCray. And now his comments actually lead me to believe that I think we should probably expect to see McCray in AAA next season, at least to start the year, because he did mention Grant knows, and he they're communicating with him that it is paramount that he gets the bat on the ball. And it is that is the most important thing. And he said he's going to run into a few because he has some sneaky power, but he should be a line drive gap to gap guy. And I think all of us would agree with that when you see Grant McCray's speed. And then he just kind of went on to talk about just how much his speed can cause havoc on the base paths and on a defense, and just put so much stress. And you can tell this is a guy that Posey really wants to see be just a game wrecker for the Giants. But the way he talked about him, I think they're going to be overhauling his swing a little bit and trying to get, whether it's flattening the bat path or whatever, because just get the ball on the ground, hit a lot more line drives. But it was interesting to see that was the guy that really got him to get going, talking about one of their young players.
Agreed.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, appreciate you, Jeff. You guys got anything to add on that one?
I mean, yeah. I mean, you kind of nailed it, bro. I think the three of us are all pretty optimistic and high on McCray. I mean, you and I have raved about, his defense alone is just incredible. His first step and, his speed to catch up. It's just insane. And you've been very high on his sneaky pop, like you just touched on. So, yeah, I mean, if he can get consistent at bats and sack to start out the year, hopefully sharpen some mechanics to get some consistent contact going. I mean, he can be a sneaky good player for us.
Yeah, and I really think that you're starting to see the Giants really approach their team building with, they're not so heavy on just launch angle and trying to hit the ball out of the yard, and accepting what they have in-house and what they have as far as how their field plays, and realizing that they don't need to go hard after only power hitting. Of course, the Giants definitely lack it, but with a guy like McCray, you don't want him doing that, because the way he currently swings, you're going to look at a very streaky hitter, and that's pretty much what he's been through all levels of the minor leagues. So you really, like he said, you really want to see a guy like that hitting line drives and really putting the pressure on the defense. And it reminds me a lot of I heard a long time ago with Ricky Henderson, when he first started playing baseball, his high school coach was literally like, I want you to do nothing other than hit the ball into the ground every single time, and you will get on base a ton. And that's really all it comes down to. You don't want McCray to be making easy outs by just consistently popping up and striking out because he has this huge uppercut in his swing. So I think going and identifying these little things with guys that are basically major league ready otherwise is going to be huge for the team. And he kind of opened the door for the possibility of both him and Jung-Hoo Lee sharing the outfield together as well. Yeah. So that would be an insane defensive outfield.
If Elliot Ramos is your, and I use this term lightly, worst defensive outfielder, you're doing all right out there, because that guy is not bad in the outfield, especially if you're putting him in left field. He would have well above average range for left field and a well above average arm for left field. So, I mean, if you can get McCray and Wright, or, even if they flipped those guys, whatever they decide to do, it sounds like they're pretty set on Lee in center. But if they had those two guys patrolling right in center field, McCray said it last season. He's like, yeah, guys are going to be hitting a lot of balls on the ground because they ain't going to want to put it out in the air for us. So it would be a lot of fun to watch. But you guys seen Major League, right? Obviously.
Oh, for sure.
I see McCray and I just want to Willie Mays haze him.
Right.
Make him do push-ups when he hits it.
Seriously.
I will say having that defensive group in the outfield is going to be a breath of fresh air compared to the the Jock Peterson, the Blake Sable, the AJ Pollock outfield that we witnessed a year ago. So it's absolutely a breath of fresh air.
Absolutely. And to Mark's point here, he needs to learn how to bunt for hits. Yeah, I mean, he is a guy that could finish every season with 20 bunt hits. Like, honestly,
he's got too much speed to not do that.
Yeah, just if you ever see a third baseman behind the bag, basically, he should drop a bunt like every time. Like, because he's probably gonna, if he does get the bunt down and it doesn't just go right back to the pitcher, he's gonna beat it out like every single time. So I 100% agree he should be. And his speed it's one of the best in the system. I remember the game. There was a game against Oakland where they ended up losing the game. It was one in Oakland that they lost, but his speed got them 3 bags basically in that game because he hit like a 4 or 5 hopper to the third baseman that he beat out, and then he stole a bag. And then he hit a ball into right center that the guy cut it off, but because of his speed, he took an extra bag. It's just little things like that where you're going, your legs got you 270 feet in that game. Like that's a lot of value in that. So I hope we do see him. I don't mind if they need to put him in Sacramento for a while to work on his bat path or whatever to try and help him get the ball and play more frequently. But I think he could be a really dynamic player in second half or next season, whenever, at some point.
So let me ask you guys this, because it kind of, ties into that topic with as far as, McRae's development with this comment as well. What do you guys think about the Randy Wynn promotion to VP of player development?
I actually wanted to kind of bring that up too, because it kind of ties in with the tail end of Posey's interview on KNBR. So he really made it a point that he wants cohesion, not only in the front office, but down in the clubhouse as well. With, he's mentioned this a couple times now, but he's made it a point that he wants Melvin writing the lineups. And he has no problem pitching in and giving his advice. And he said he still wants to run the numbers and kind of see what it says. But he ultimately said he wants Melvin to do what he's done for the last 20 to 30 years and go with the hot hand when he feels like somebody needs to be in the lineup multiple days in a row. And that's something that is just sorely lacked with this team. And it just showed a total lack of feel for the game. And I think that's really going to make a difference. And that's how you really build confidence, especially in some of these young guys that they're really trying to get an evaluation on. So not only that, but then promoting all these guys from within. I personally would have liked to see a little bit of some fresh faces come in, but Randy Wynn is somebody that has been known to be a really good communicator. And that's something that we've heard a lot of from, both the minor leagues to the major leagues, that there's just been a real lack of communication. And it's almost seemed like a lot of these guys in the lower levels of the minor leagues aren't really being heard when they're giving an evaluation on some of these guys. And Posey almost insinuated that, some of these players that are getting promoted really quickly, it's almost like the evaluations are being made from the top and not really coming from the minor leagues, which is ultimately what you're paying these guys to do. You have these guys in place. You want to really just go off of what their word is rather than crunching numbers and going off of box scores.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think another read on the way they were, the way they're doing all these internal hires is, we said this a lot with Farhan, where it's not necessarily like his, philosophy or him not being capable of identifying any good players or big time talent or anything like that. It's just, I know my biggest complaint this time was just he wasn't bold enough. Like he didn't put himself out there and take the big risks. And there might be some truth to the fact that maybe Posey feels like, we got guys internally that are really bright that can do this job. We just don't think we had the right guy steering the ship. And, we'll find out if he's right once, with the, especially with the Manassian hire, we'll find out how right he was with that. But I know that was my biggest complaint the entire time Farhan was there. It was just like, we never did anything bold. We never did anything risky to try and get any big time talent. It was always just like, it's like he sat around hoping one of those guys would just fall in his lap one day.
The riskiest move was probably, or I wouldn't say riskiest, but the ballsiest move was probably either the Will Wilson move or the Cozart move.
Yeah.
Was it Cozart? Yeah.
Yeah.
Those were some of the bolder moves that we saw, which I think most fans, liked at that time. And then once those kind of blew up in his face, he just kind of got super hesitant on making any type of risk ever again. So
I loved the creativity of that move. Like what did you get a good player? No, I mean, Will Wilson obviously hasn't, panned out, but I love the creativity of that. Being like, yeah, sure, we'll pay this dude $9 million to get your first round pick. Like, absolutely. I thought that was a really savvy move that he did, but didn't work out. So I wish he would have done more stuff like that.
That's Larry's favorite player, wherever Larry's at.
Yeah, sorry, Larry, if you're watching right now. When do you expect the Giants to start signing free agent players? Sometime in December? Yeah, I mean, usually after Thanksgiving is when it starts to pick up a little bit. Guys get through the holidays, and then it typically will start picking up a little, going up towards the winter meetings. It's always a crapshoot on that one. When was Lee? Like mid-December last year? And that was our first big move.
Yeah, it was like something a week and a half or 2 weeks before Christmas, something like that.
Yeah. Hopefully it's sooner than that this year. Last year was such a boring free agency.
It really was. But I mean, I told you guys, and I'm not going to make it a big deal on here, but we've apparently already made an offer to somebody. So we'll see how that goes.
Dan's got his sources, people. You can't say who it is, but
I want to call it sources. Like, I got one buddy who gives me a little bit of intel, and then I share it with these two guys. So
yeah. Now we're gonna have people asking who it is, but so that's gonna lead us into, actually, before we get going on this next segment, we have like 70 or so people in here. For those of you that are in YouTube, drop a comment. That's all you got to do to get entered in the giveaway that we're going to do at the end of the show. Like I said, I'm going to remind everyone a few times during this because I want everybody to have a chance to get in. We'll talk about the giveaway. I mean, we can talk about it already if you guys want, like some of the items. We've kind of decided, you guys voted, and you voted to only do one per week for each of the next 3 live shows. If you guys read the little community post, I did post what they are. We do have a autographed Bryce Eldridge ball. Ricky has a signed Patrick Bailey card. He can give you more details on that because I am not the big guy when it comes to cards. And Dan, you said you had a 2003 game worn patch from Barry Bonds.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
Yeah. So we'll let whoever wins tonight, you can pick which one you want. And then whoever wins the next one, you can pick which one you want. And then the third person, you just get what's left. They're all pretty fun items, though.
It's pretty good stuff. A lot of giveaways that I've seen have been like, oh, we'll give you a $20 DoorDash gift card. So I mean, like, we got some excitement here.
Yeah. Yeah, somebody asked last week, I think, if I was giving away one of the bats, and I'm like, well, considering they all have my name on them and say like happy birthday, like, no, I'm not giving the bats. Oh God. But so the next thing we were going to talk about is we were going to go into a little bit of kind of what a realistic offseason could look like for the Giants. And I'm taking into account some of the rumors that are out there when I put mine together, and that some of those rumors include, like, they're not going to go after a qualifying offer guy. They're going to cut payroll. They're going to, some of the players that they're talking about moving in trades already, some of the things that we've kind of heard leaked out there. And, you guys, if you guys want to make any different or any changes to this, go for it. I think you guys already know what my thing is. I laid it out the other day, and some of it was talking with Ricky as well. But kind of what I came up with is right now they are $67 million under the competitive balance tax. They're going to cut payroll, so they're going to get themselves under the tax. To me, this team could easily accomplish this. first thing, I have them signing 3 different players, and they're all 3 players that they've been connected to in some capacity. Some of them aren't going to be as super popular, but number 1, they could re-sign Blake Snell. There's no qualifying offer. Somebody mentioned it earlier. There's no qualifying offer on him. I'm going to estimate it like 35 million AAV.
Yeah.
Number 2, you could sign Ha-Seong Kim. I'm going to go on the high end with the projection just for the money's sake. You could sign him 15-ish million AAV, and you could sign Tanner Scott, who for anybody that likes the WAR statistic, as a left-handed reliever, he put up a 4 WAR season last season and has a lot of he has closing experience. You know, you have that team that just won the World Series that happens to have 2 left-handed MVP players in their lineup. It'd be kind of nice to be able to neutralize those guys late in games with not just Eric Miller. So you have those 3 guys. And then I also have them making a trade for first baseman Yandy Diaz from the Rays, who's making about $8 million. So you're adding about, what does that come out to? $73 million to the payroll, roughly. And then turning around, they can make 3 different trades to clear off some money. You trade Yaz in his $9.5 estimated million. You could trade Lamont Wade Jr. in his $4.7 million. I know, Ricky, you mentioned maybe flipping him back to Tampa as part of that deal. Yeah. And then I think you should be able to trade Taylor Rogers, and you'd at least be able to trade about $9 million of his contract. Maybe you can't get the whole thing, but my thought process is if you can trade $9 million of Ross Stripling's money, you should be able to trade Taylor Rogers. Yeah. And at least get $9 million of cap relief in that. So that means you're saving about $23 million roughly. So we'll take that off of the 73. That leaves them, I believe, about $17 or $18 million under the tax. And it gives you really good front end of the rotation. You could have an elite bullpen. You have, you can solidify your defense at shortstop, get a little bit more contact in the lineup. Yandy Diaz he's kind of Ricky. We kind of agreed he was kind of like a Lamont Wade with more power, basically. High average guy, gets on base.
Actually plays a full healthy season.
Yeah, stays healthy.
I was going to say he has 2 working hamstrings.
But yeah,
Yandy Diaz is basically what a lot of Giants fans are delusional and think Lamont Wade, or that it's basically what they wish Lamont Wade was and what they think he could be, but he never actually fulfills that potential, basically, is what Yandy Diaz is.
That's fair.
Yeah. So with this, you could basically have a great front end, a great bullpen, a really good defensive lineup, a little bit more contact and speed in your lineup as well, and an upgrade at first base. And you also give the opportunity to guys like Luis Matos and Casey Schmidt potentially could play second. And then you have Fitz still playing every day in some kind of super utility role. But you could basically create opportunity for your young guys. And in my opinion, you'd have a more competitive, more competitive roster going into next season. It might not be a playoff team, but this is a more competitive team where it also gives you the opportunity to get those evaluations on the young players. And you can figure out where you're at. And then next season, if your team's, outperforming expectations and you feel like you can upgrade at the deadline, you can go for it. If you want the whole season, maybe you miss the playoffs, you might sell off a couple guys at midseason, but you might at least have an idea going into next offseason of what you want to do. Like, if you go through the season and Matos gets half the year and he just doesn't look like he's developed, and, then maybe you put McRae out there and he just looks completely lost. Go all out at Kyle Tucker next offseason. Go identify an outfielder that you want to attack next offseason. But to me, this is something the Giants could easily afford and accomplish. And it doesn't sign any qualifying offer players. It's not going over the tax. It's just, I don't know. What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean, I like it. Don't get me wrong. That'd be wonderful. Myself personally, I've got 3 predictions that I've had since probably the beginning of the offseason. And they're a little bit more, what's the word I'm looking for? safe, I guess. But I think realistically, I think they can go out. I think they can sign Snell. Will they? I don't know. They'd have to like try to at least not be completely outbid. But if it's for, like you said, around 35 mil per year, I think they can land Snell. I think they definitely need a starter. So getting Snell again would be wonderful. Secondly, I'm fairly confident they're going to sign Ha-Seong Kim. I would love Willie Adames, but I just have a bad gut feeling that somebody's going to fork out way too much money. So, and I think, Kim is a lot more doable. And then thirdly, I really lean towards a 1-year deal for Goldschmidt. I like the idea of Diaz, don't get me wrong, but I can't help but think that they want Bryce to at least get, a good crack in Sacramento for the majority of the season. So I think having Goldschmidt as, not only a bridge gap, but a mentor for him as well is going to be huge. And then as far as, cutting costs is concerned, I definitely think they flip Yaz and they flip Wade for sure. And then just for safekeepings, get rid of Wilmer, get rid of Murphy too, just to make Caveman happy. But no, as far as, accusations are concerned, those are going to be the three that I think are going to be plausible. And yeah, those are my thoughts.
I think all of those are valid. Sure. And really quick before you get going, Ricky, how his contract situation better than I do? Doesn't Diaz have like a club option the following year?
Yeah, he does. So this year I believe he's already opted in for the $8 million, and it's the same thing next year. It's another $8 million club option. Okay. So the money is not an issue with him, and this is a guy we talked about it on the simulcast with other Dan. Yandy Diaz is a guy that's not only affordable, but again, you trade out one guy and you're almost offsetting that money, and you're really not at much of an increase on your payroll. So he's really a guy you need to look at, and he's a guy who just 2 years ago, I believe, won the batting title, and he had a .330 batting average. So imagine that on the Giants. When's the last time you saw a guy hit .330 on this team? So,
and he's usually around what, 15 or so homers, high teens.
Yeah, he's kind of like 12 to 15 range. He's not going to hit you a ton of homers, but not going to strike out a ton. His average is going to be solid, and he's going to get on base. Yeah. So, that's kind of something
that we need hitters. So, yeah.
And that's kind of something I discussed on our show last week was, just you could really see the Giants going into this offseason completely prioritizing just contact hitting, while adding a little bit of power in like one spot, if you were to get a big name like Adames or Santander, and then really just going with the rest of the guys, just really emphasizing contacts. So yeah. Now, as far as my realistic offseason goes, I could see them doing something like Yandy Diaz. I agree with, obviously, as far as a trade goes. Something I mentioned was, given his cheap contract and given that you could still technically have him for another year, having a guy like that, you could give up Wade, who the Rays you could definitely see them coveting. He definitely fits the way they like to do things, and he wouldn't be making them take on a ton of money. And then you go and throw them, a decent prospect like a Jack Cho or somebody like that, or even like a Mason Black. I honestly feel like could get that deal done, because it would save them a little bit of money, and it would also give them another young player, because you have to look at them kind of like the A's. They're always looking ahead and trying to get rid of guys before their contracts expire so they can get value back in return. So I could see them doing a Yandy Diaz at first base. I could see them going a little bit cheaper on starting pitching and going and getting Shinosuke Ogasawara, the Japanese guy, lefty, very similar to Imanaga with the Cubs, very similar contract. You would spend a little bit of money. He could possibly be getting like 15 mil per year, but he's a guy that more than likely, given the contract situation for those guys that are getting posted, you're probably looking at a guy getting a lot of options, mutual options on his contract, where both the Giants and the player would have to opt in each year. So it would really be a low risk deal. Ha-Seong Kim, I still, like Dan said, I see that being the most likely outcome. Not necessarily what I would do, but that's kind of what I see happening. And then I could see them doing a Tanner Scott or somebody on that level as far as, addressing the late innings, because there's a very high likelihood that Doval ends up getting traded. Don't agree with that, but that's kind of where we're at. I think Melvin and him just do not mesh well, and I think he really burned a lot of bridges last year with his attitude.
Yeah. I do think, is Doval's value what it was before last season? No, absolutely not. It's definitely not that high. No. But just given what his stuff is and all the success he has had, it's not like his value is completely nothing. Yes, trading him now is trading it at its lowest. It could get lower. If he comes out in the first half and is just awful again, it could definitely get lower. But I do think there are teams around the league that would value him as a closer, that they would overpay relative to his performance last season, but still not what you would have gotten had you traded him before the season last season. I do think he has more value than maybe a lot of us give credit. So it could make sense depending on what you get back. You're not going to get a top 100 prospect right now for him, more than likely, but you can probably get another team's equivalent to a Carson Wisenhunt. That's, a guy that's in the he probably would end up in the 101 to 150 range if they expanded those lists. They probably could get a guy in that range. It's a really, really good prospect, but
here's an idea. Trade him for Norby. Oh, wait.
Oops.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing we've talked about in the past is if they do make a big move for, I use Bichette as a guy that might get traded. That's a better player. Doval could potentially be part of the package going back. Yes, you're going to trade more than just Doval because they're going to want more than just Doval, but he could end up being a part of that package going back, Doval plus prospects. So, we'll see. And I agree. Rob says not the time to trade Doval. I don't think it is, but I could see it happening, just like Ricky said, if he's just not meshing with Melvin at all, and Melvin's get this guy out of my clubhouse, then they may sell lower than we want. And we don't know the dynamics. I know there were rumors out there, and I don't like to sit here and say this is the whole truth, because we don't know, because we're not there in the clubhouse with them. But there were rumors that there were some players that were really fed up with his act last season. So this might be something that's coming from players too. This could be a Logan Webb and a Matt Chapman come into the front office going, you got to get this guy out of here. So we don't know that part. That's the hard part.
Yeah.
So, but from a value standpoint, I hate selling low. You don't do that. So,
yeah, it's a good idea. If it comes down to it, I wouldn't be opposed to it. My biggest trade candidate would be, I told this to you guys, you trade Wilmer Flores to the Staten Island Ferry Hawks for a New York slice of pizza.
It gets old.
So that's
I texted, and someone put this in the chat. I don't know if you guys saw this, but we've made all these jokes about sending guys to the Korean League. And Mitch White, who made his brief appearance with the Giants last season, signed with one of the KBO teams today. So got a good chuckle out of that one.
Giants
quality players we've watched over the last few years. Where are they now?
God, I don't even want to know on some of them. But
I don't even care for most of them.
Yeah, I don't. Every now and then one of them pops up, Hunter Strickland last season popped up with the Angels. And I was what the heck? This guy's still in the league. And then I don't remember who hit it, but somebody hit one 2/3 of the way up the bleachers off of him, and it cracked me up. I was like, "Yep, still him." But so what are some other trades?
Real quick, I was just gonna say, Grand shouts out Dave Portnoy. If you know, you know. If you know, you know.
Yeah.
Damn. Well, we're gonna jump into some different trades. Ricky had a few different ideas. Before we do that, though, really quick, anybody here that wants to get entered in the giveaway, drop a comment in the live chat. You have to be in YouTube to do it, but drop a comment because it is going to pull from everybody that put comments. That's how you get entered in the little giveaway feature we have. So drop a comment in there. You can ask a question. We'll start. We'll probably get some questions from you guys. We're probably not going to go too crazy late tonight. Unfortunately, we're at that point in the offseason. There's just not a ton out there happening. So we're not going to go too insanely late. We can only talk about the same stuff over and over again so many times. But drop some questions, any ideas you guys want us to talk about tonight. And but before that, Ricky's going to give us some different trade ideas that he came up with.
Yeah, so obviously we already discussed the Yandy Diaz trade. Another guy that's being floated out there on his team is Brandon Lowe. I personally wouldn't covet a guy like him because he's more of a second baseman. And I honestly think this year we're going to see the Giants kind of really attack that position by committee. I think we're going to see guys like Fitz, Schmidt, a variety of different guys kind of get trickled in there until one guy really takes the job because, like Posey said, it seems like at some positions they really need to get more of an evaluation. But he is somebody that is on the table. He's a versatile player, has a lot of power. He hit, I believe, 21 jacks last year. So he is an option that could really help your lineup. And he wouldn't be super expensive. I think he is projected to make like 12, 14 mil, something like that. So not terrible. And you wouldn't have to keep him around for too long. I think he's only got another year or two left on his deal. So there's him. Another guy that's been floated out is Josh Naylor of the Guardians. If you guys don't know, he had 31, 32 bombs last year. Gets on base at a decent clip. And he's a guy that he is on an expiring deal, but he is a guy that you could look to keep around long term in the DH role when Bryce is ready to come up and take over first base. And he could really help elevate the middle of the order. He's a guy that ultimately Cleveland is more than likely you're going to be able to call their bluff on, and they're going to get rid of him either now or in July or by July during the season because they're a team that more than likely isn't going to be able to afford that kind of contracts. He's about 30, 31 years old. So he's a guy I would look at trying to acquire depending on how you attack free agency first. Another guy on the starting pitching side that I'm a little intrigued in is Framber Valdez of the Astros. He's also on an expiring deal. He's expected to make around $18 million through arbitration this year. But if you're looking for, the kind of the way they've attacked the front of the rotation the last few years, he's a guy that you could plug into the 2 or 3 spot in your rotation. Obviously, he's not going to match the production Snell gave you in the second half, but he's definitely a guy that will give you innings and is a pretty solid, steady guy that you kind of know what you're getting in. ERA is going to be a little bit higher, but he is a solid arm that you could add. You could see something like that and the Japanese lefty I mentioned. I know Cody and I have a little bit different opinions on how they're going to attack the rotation. He believes that we could see them add 1 starting pitcher. I could see them honestly getting 2 just because of the uncertainty with, Kyle Harrison, Hayden Birdsong, Wisenhunt, if he even makes it up this year. Black, Roop, all these guys. It really depends on how much run they want to give those guys and how many innings they can handle this year. So those are some names that are out there. Just looking at some of the teams that will for sure be, looking to make trades. One other guy I didn't mention earlier because a lot of people probably won't see it as being the most realistic for the Giants, but if they want to get a little bit more aggressive, I've mentioned Freddie Peralta before, starting pitcher for the Brewers. Now he is a guy that would absolutely be able to plug in and be like a 1A, 1B situation with Logan Webb. He's got this year and next year left on his contract. He is going to be a little bit more pricey as far as, you know, what you're going to be sending out, but he's a guy that's still in his prime, and you could definitely extend long term, and then you kind of have a little bit more solidified of a, you know, front of the end of the rotation. And, you know, with Milwaukee being a smaller market team, I highly doubt they're going to be extending him long term. That's just my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Real quick, I just wanted to say, because Gran just basically took what I was going to say. Framber, that's a great pull. I didn't even think about that, because he is like a great ground ball pitcher, which kind of meshes well with what the Giants have and look for. So that's a good pull. Just want to give you kudos on that.
Especially if you did sign like a guy like Kim.
Yeah,
like, I mean, yeah, it wouldn't be the sexiest signing, but like especially if you got a guy like Kim and then you put Schmidt at second base, like your infield defense could be legit. Getting a guy like him, that would be really awesome. I like Freddie Peralta. To be fair, I do think they could sign 2 starters. I just don't think they're going to sign 2 starters that are like $10 million plus pitchers. Like I see if they get a second starter, it's going to be, how can I put it? It would be like a Jacob Junis type that's like more of a bulk guy anyway, that they could plug in and get you 5 innings a start if they needed to, if stuff hit the fan. That's kind of how I look at it.
And to give you credit on something you mentioned to Dan and I before, you know, somebody that they could also look into, like for a role like that, if he's willing to take it, is Alex Cobb. If they want to bring him back, he's somebody that I could totally see at this point in his career taking on a, you know, either 5th starter or, you know, long relief role. Because again, if you're throwing out all these young guys, more than likely within the first couple of months in the season, if not in spring, you're going to see guys go down. So you always want to have some nice, solid starting pitching depth, even if it's somebody like that.
Well, here's a name that we haven't touched on, and I haven't really seen the media touch on much, but we did kind of briefly bring it up weeks back. If all else fails, as far as like free agency goes, and you know your plan A and plan B options kind of fall through, what about making an offer for Sonny Gray? I mean, he's on a pretty pricey contract, but that just means you can get him for cheap. Might not be a bad fallback option.
I would love Sonny Gray on this team for as far as competitive balance tax purposes goes. It's basically the Ray deal. I mean, because he's making $30 million actual each of the next 2 seasons, but because of the construction or the structure of his contract, it's only 25 against the tax each year because he only got paid 15 last season. I mean, I would love that deal. Like if they could get that, I'm gonna be honest. I actually think if you can get Sonny Gray for, you know, a half-eaten bag of nachos or something, like I think that's better than signing Snell, frankly, as far as like the bang for your buck, because I think you could afford a guy like him and then turn around and afford a Willy Adames and still be able to afford another player. Whereas if you sign a Snell, like, I mean, I'm going to ask you guys a question. Like, if do you think this team, I mean, we know they could afford it, but like, as far as getting under the tax and, you know, with where the constraints they're likely going to operate under, like, do you guys think this team realistically could sign both Snell and Adames, or do you think it would have to be one or the other?
They could sign both.
I don't know. For
and
me,
add others. That's what I'll say.
For me, I think if they're going to do both, I think Adames would need to come first, because Adames is going to put whatever teams are going after him into a massive bidding war because he's literally all there is on the market at his position. And obviously the position he plays makes it that much more vital to get a guy like him done as early as possible. Because if you go out and spend on Snell and then you go and sign, a decent first baseman, and then I don't know, say you get another starting pitcher or an outfielder, and then Adames is still hanging out there and you got to go compete money-wise with the Dodgers, Giants might be a little bit more reluctant to do that, where I think if you sign Adames first and then you're like, okay, I haven't addressed the starting rotation yet, it might be a situation like last year where Snell, even though he won't publicly say it, kind of limits his field as far as who's going after him. It could just very well be the Giants, the Padres, and the Dodgers going after him. Or like Cody mentioned the other day, maybe the Angels, but don't see Snell wanting to go to the Angels. I really don't think Snell is a huge necessity for the Dodgers, so I can easily see the Giants outbidding them on a guy like him. And then the Padres, who are starting to face money issues because of all the long-term contracts they have locked up. So I think if you get Adames done first, it's absolutely doable.
I also think that question ties back into what I pointed out as far as the arbitration is concerned. That 15 mil can make or break whether you get one or the other or both. I mean, let's just be real. Just depending on how you play your cards. So I mean, can they sign both and get somebody else like a Kim, for example, or a Scott or something? I mean, yeah, they absolutely can. But will they? It's a whole nother question. I think it's going to end up being kind of like a domino effect as this offseason plays out.
Yeah. My gut is that it ends up being one or the other, but they definitely could afford both. Because like I'm doing the quick math in my head, and like they move those arbitration guys and $9 million of Taylor Rogers. That's $23 million, which they have 67 under the tax right now. So that leaves you $90 million in room. Yeah. I mean, you should be able to sign Adames and Snell for 60-ish, but between the two AAV. So I mean that still puts you 30 million under. So I mean, I agree. I think they could. It's just like my gut feeling that like they wouldn't go out and do both. But I mean, I hope they prove me wrong, because you bring both those guys back. That's a damn good offseason. Even if you did nothing else, like I think that's a really good offseason. Step in the right direction. So I don't know. We'll see. But to your point, some of those other trades you mentioned, obviously we talked about Diaz. I like him. I really like Freddie Peralta. If they could manage to pull that one off, I think that would be he's inexpensive too at the front for at least another year? You said he has another year after this one?
Yeah, I believe he has an option on his contract. Let me just double check, but yeah, I believe you'd get him for 2 years at a pretty reasonable amount.
Which because of that, you might be able to get an extension done for a pretty decent number. Because if you kind of tear up the last 2 years, so to speak, to extend him.
Yeah.
So he's opted in for a club option this year at $8 million, and then he has a club option for next year at $8 million, and then he hits free agency at age 31 in 2027. Okay. So
if the Giants offer him, I don't know, I'm going to throw a number out there. What's Webb's like 5 for 90? You offer him 5 for, I don't know, 85, 90. You think like you all of a sudden, the way he would look at it is, I'm going to make $8-9 million more a year on the front end. Maybe I'm sacrificing a little on the back end, but maybe it's a negotiating tool if you have him for an inexpensive number for a couple of years.
Not wrong.
And just for clarity on some of these trades, guys, because there's been some back and forth on X about this as well. A lot of these guys I'm mentioning, the reason I'm mentioning guys on expiring deals or guys with only 2 years left on their deals is because the Giants are kind of playing this game of where they're trying to kind of retool and win at the same time. So at the end of the day, when they're working with a budget, yes, they have the ability to sign, one or two higher end free agents, but you also have to look at, cheap, cost effective ways to bring in proven talent as well. It seems like they're kind of trying to do both things at the same time. So you have to look at guys who are on expiring deals who you're not going to be giving up, Bryce Eldridge or, Walker Martin, Rainer Arias, guys like that for. So you can go and bring in these guys. So it's just a balance, because any of these top end guys they're going to bring in free agency, you're going to be having them around for 5-6 years. So you want to go and bring in a guy on a cheap contract before he gets paid, go do that for a year or two, and you're not giving up a huge haul. Like Freddie Peralta, why can't they get that done? You could go and flip Wisenhunt and another prospect, and you probably get him. Only thing is I don't see the Brewers being super willing to trade him this year, just because they could opt in and get him back next year for $8 million, and that would still be within their budget. But the Giants have the excess of pitching prospects to be able to go and trade from that strength and go and bring in a guy that's ready now that can give you innings now. So that's kind of where I'm at with that.
And I think you kind of just nailed it right there. That was one of the things that we complained about. I wouldn't say complained, but critiqued about with Farhan a lot over the last few years, how he was super unwilling to deal with any of his prospects. Like he didn't want to flip any of them for talent and rather would just waste them instead. So now that you kind of have a surplus and you got a GM who's very trade minded, I think that's a great idea there. Yeah. And real quick, Road King Rob, the three of us kind of gave our opinions on that. They mentioned making a trade for Yandy Diaz, and I brought up potentially a bridge signing of Goldschmidt. But those are just some ideas that we had.
Yeah. Goldschmidt, really, I mean, he had a bad year last season, but I mean, 2 years ago, he had like an 800 OPS back in 2023, like an 800 plus OPS. Like maybe he's getting old. Maybe he's got one more good year in him. I mean,
people forget he rakes at Oracle. Yeah. Like historically rakes at Oracle. So
he's a really good defender. So, I mean, he would at least help you on that aspect. I don't know. It's one of those that they could sign him and he could do absolutely nothing and it wouldn't shock me. And they could sign him and he could be like a 260, hit 20 and be a plus defender. And that wouldn't shock me either, honestly.
Here's my thing with that. Is it going to be worse than what you're getting out of Wade and Wilmer? Like you can literally only go up from there. So why not?
I mean, what'd they combine for this season? I mean, I know Wilmer missed a couple months and Wade missed some time, but the two of those, the Flayed platoon got you about 8 home runs and it was like 45 RBIs.
I believe it was like 8 home runs and 43 to be exact, with like a combined 630 OPS or something. Like it, you can quite literally only improve. No matter who you go, whether it's Santana, whether it's Goldschmidt, whether it's Diaz, whether it's Ricky, I mean, whoever you plug in at first is going to be an upgrade over those two.
It's a good one. Yandy, I mean, we talked a lot about Yandy. I mean, that's a good option. Like any of those three guys as a bridge, I think it's an upgrade. Like that's the thing. Like you're making your team better with that move. I don't even mind keeping Wade around in a bench role. I mean, the price tag he's going to get, like that's not unreasonable for a bench player for this season. I just do believe that you could probably, of the guys that you're going to trade, like you're talking about trading, if they do keep Duvall, for instance, like if we talk about moving the Taylor Rogers, you're probably not going to get a great prospect for him. Like you got Jonah Cox for Stripling. Maybe you get a slightly better prospect than a Jonah Cox because Taylor Rogers is a little better than Stripling was at the time, but you're not going to get a great prospect for him. Yaz, he's too expensive to get you a really good prospect. But Lamont Wade Jr., like he is a very reasonable price tag. Like you could probably get a decent prospect for Lamont Wade Jr. And I think that's why a lot of us feel like you should upgrade the position and make that move and just get something for him. And then, to both your guys' points, like this team, like as much as we might bag on the Giants' overall system and lack of trade assets, like they do have an abundance of young pitching that should be enough to get some of the guys that you guys have mentioned. Like when you have guys like Landon Roop, who I really like, and I don't want to see them move Landon Roop, but you have guys like Landon Roop, Mason Black, Trevor McDonald. Pick one of your 3 left-handed pitchers between Harrison, Wisenhunt, and Whitman. Like they have nice pitching that aren't necessarily like top of the, you're not looking at, I mean, Harrison was like a top 20 guy, but a lot of these guys aren't, super high end prospects, but they're really good arms. And those are the kinds of guys that often get moved in these trades for, a Valdez or, a Diaz or any of these guys. Like you can usually, or Josh Naylor. I know you mentioned him, which I'm going to ask you guys a question, kind of just a philosophical question with roster building, but yeah, getting a guy like Josh Naylor, it's totally doable with what they have. Maybe they don't have the ammunition to get a guy like Luis Robert Jr. or if like Vladdy Jr. wanted to be traded or like they decided to move him without giving up Eldridge. But I think you should easily be able to get one of these other deals done.
Yeah.
So, and then my philosophical question was, because this is my one concern with getting a guy like Naylor. I really like him as a 1 year, first base. And then if Eldridge like forces the issue, then maybe you kick him to DH for half the year. But like philosophically, how do you guys feel about having a full-time DH? Or do you feel like it kind of, we'll just say limits your roster flexibility too much?
You go, Rick.
It does. I'm not the hugest fan of it. It just, it really comes down to what your options are. And, ultimately you can get a guy like Naylor who's on an expiring deal. You have him for this year and you kind of just play it by ear and wait and see what Bryce does. If Bryce forces the issue, then it's probably an easier decision. And you say, well, we're not going to waste the money on bringing Naylor back for 5 years and giving him, a higher average annual value. So I think with a guy like that, you just play it by ear. And ultimately, same thing with Yandy, same thing with Naylor. I feel like you bring either of these guys in, you're not worried about, blocking Bryce. I saw somebody comment earlier that, you don't bring in Yandy to block a 20-year-old. Well, ultimately, we don't know what they're going to do with Bryce this year. We really don't. Posey has made it very clear that he views things a lot differently when handling these young guys than Farhan did when they begun promoting people very aggressively. He just said in his interview yesterday, ultimately, Bryce needs to absolutely dominate at AAA or whatever level he starts at before he gets promoted. So we could see people adjust to him and it take a full year for him to come up. Maybe it's shorter. And then for half a season, you put one of these guys from first base over to DH. Yandy also can play third base. Obviously, you have Chapman, so you're not going to do that. But you just DH him or you DH Bryce and let him just focus on hitting. Either way, it's not really going to kill you for half of a season. So
I think Ricky nailed it. Absolutely, 100% agree. But my biggest takeaway of all this is, regardless of which direction you go, whether you want to go all in on a full-time DH or you want to have some sort of flexibility, you need to have an improved roster, plain and simple. It cannot be like last season where you were DHing, Patrick Bailey on one day, and then Wilmer Flores on another day, and then Tom Murphy on another day, or Austin Slater DH and leading off one day. Like, you cannot go at it with that approach where you're just putting some garbage 7, 8, 9 hitter as your DH and just hoping that something sticks. Like, you got to improve. If you're going to go the flexibility route, you got to have somebody you can plug in and be a legit threat in your lineup right there. Or if you want to go the full-time DH route, like, that's fine too. But you cannot go no more platooning the DH position and just expecting magic to happen.
Yeah. I'm one of those people that, like, I like having the flexibility, and I'm okay with, Matos gets a day off and he goes and DHs, or like Ramos or Chapman, like, you occasionally get them a day off in the field and they DH, and that's part of where I like the the flexibility with that. Yeah, Bailey is not the kind of hitter that I'd necessarily be like, I got to keep that guy in the lineup, all year long. Maybe against a righty, I'd throw him back out there and let him DH for a day. But I think to me, it comes down to like, if you get a great hitter, like if you get like a really, really good hitter, a guy that's going to be a 20% better than average hitter year in and year out, and then I could probably, I'd live with it. I don't like the overall inflexibility it causes, but like I would live with it. I think it was tough because last season it was like a compounding issue because Soler was doing it, but he was just not producing at the plate. So it's like he can't be put out in the field. You couldn't give Conforto a day off and just let him keep hitting, even though that was like the one thing he did decently. Like you couldn't do anything like that because Soler was there, but then Soler wasn't producing. So like that's, to me, that's where the problem comes up.
And that goes hand in hand with what I'm saying, because like Soler, for example, who did he have protecting him? He had Slater in front of him and Wilmer or Conforto behind him. And it was just kind of one of those things like, all right, we can pitch around this dude. Like if he draws a walk, cool, we're just going to get the next guy out. Or, oh, cool. He's probably not going to get on base. And even if he does, he's not going to get driven. And like, there was no threat in the lineup that you had to worry about. So that's like kind of where it goes hand in hand with what I'm saying. But I think Encarnacion can be a good option. I mean, he proved himself to be reliable in the outfield or more than capable in the outfield. And he obviously had the bat for a DH role. So I think, push comes to shove, he could be a good option there.
He's played some first base at some point in his career, so I really would not mind if they handed him a first base mitt occasionally and just said, like, dude, it's going to get you in the lineup. Like, I know that was something we were talking with Casey a couple days ago, and Casey was like, man, I'll do whatever it takes to get myself in the lineup if they want to put me wherever. So, it's, I don't know. We'll look. I think we had a couple other comments in here. If they could land, would we be behind a Luis Robert trade? I mean, it depends on the cost, but I mean, I would be behind taking that swing. Like when he's right, he's a top 10 player in baseball ish, 15. Like it's one of the better players, and he's in his prime, and he's not expensive, and he has 3 more years of control. Like it's absolutely the kind of player I would take a huge swing on, but health has been his problem, and I don't think you should be paying. I don't know. I don't think you should be dropping Eldridge in a deal for him. Like that's where I'm at because of his health issues, and I'm not sure you can get that deal done without him.
Exactly what I was gonna say. Yeah. So I don't know. I'm kind of out on Luis Robert and Crochet. I don't know. It seems like the White Sox are at this point very unwilling to budge on their extremely high demands on both of those guys. I understand why. Giants just really aren't in a position to take that big of a swing on either of those guys, in my opinion. Now, if they want to come down from what they're asking, sure. But at the end of the day, he did not have a very good year last year, and Giants fans would have lost it if they would have went and, traded away a huge haul, and then he played the way he did. I remember some mental errors from him last year too. I mean, he was on a historically bad White Sox team, but it's just a little concerning for what you'd have to give up. That's not something I want to see out of a guy that I'd be trading half my farm system for.
Hey, we lost to that historically bad White Sox team, okay?
Yeah. Sure did.
Even the worst teams win, 30% of their games? It used to be like 40% of their games, and now it's like there's been some real bad teams the last couple of years. This one was in reference. I have to give it a little shout out. Grant says, but Stripling was inventing pitches like Ricky Vaughn. For those of you that have seen Major League 2, and he tells Parkman, if you get a piece of it, you can name it, and then Parkman hits it about 800 feet. The name of that pitch that Parkman gives it is about what I thought of Stripling stuff. So if you know, you know. I just don't want to get my show canceled. So, but yeah, anybody have any other questions they want to throw in? We're going to get this giveaway going here in just a minute. I'll give everybody a couple more minutes. If you haven't already, drop a comment in there. That's how you get entered. And then we will let whoever wins choose what they want. So,
Yeah.
You guys got anything else you want to talk about while we give them a few more minutes?
Off topic, but I did want to just take a brief moment to thank you two personally for like the love and support you've shown myself and my family over the last week, as well as everyone else like in the comments that follows me on X. Like I got some nice, DMs and comments that are super uplifting. So I just wanted to take a moment just to thank you two personally, and then everyone else. It really means a lot for myself with everything going on with my dad. So thank you guys, man.
Yeah,
Of course.
Yeah, of course, man. Anytime your family comes first. Dan's been working a lot of hours the last week, and I know we certainly appreciate that you still can be here. We totally understand if you couldn't, man.
Dude, I'm still in my uniform.
I know he didn't even take off his work clothes today. Like that's how committed he is to giving you guys a good show. But yes, it's all love over here. So,
yeah, appreciate you guys though, man.
Yeah.
I did want to say
isn't a bad idea if he's available. I mean, we joked about the other guy that might be available in Minnesota, Carlos Correa.
Oh man,
imagine
that'd be hilarious.
That would be wild. No, Buxton would be solid again. Like Krister just said, he definitely is prone to injuries, but that guy is very, very high upside. Like when he's actually healthy and playing, that guy could have been a superstar for sure. It's really sad what's happened with his career because the dude does perform when he actually is out there.
Yeah. He hasn't really had the performance lows of Luis Robert. Like he's had when he's on the field, he's dynamic and really good. And it's just, can he get on the field? Yeah. This would actually be the funniest part for me is they'd say like the Giants have traded for Carlos Correa pending a physical, and everyone would just be sitting there for like a week.
Oh man.
Oh god.
I do have a few other names that the Giants could go after too that wouldn't really hurt their budget too much either. Is somebody we've talked about before. Not the biggest fan of this guy, but he is a little bit more versatile. Is Alec Boehm, just as a short-term, cheaper option that probably wouldn't cost too crazy much in a trade. That could go over to first base. He could fill in at third. He could fill in the outfield. Decent bat. Again, he's not some superstar. You'll be lucky to get like a low 800 OPS out of him, but he does have a little bit of power. And 2 seasons ago, he was really good for the Phillies. So he's a guy, and he's still in his prime. He's only 27, 28 years old, something like that. So he's another option if you want to just go cheap, more short term there. And a guy that you can kind of move around.
And I don't know if a lot of people remember, he was actually pretty good defensively at first base, if I recall.
Yeah. No, he's solid. He can pick it.
Yeah.
A couple other guys I saw somebody actually remind me in the chat and mention it, but we kind of talked about Walker Buehler. Walker Buehler could be a guy you just get on a short-term prove-it deal. Maybe you go and ball out and you spend money on some position players and you're like, okay, let's take a chance on Buehler, and him and Ray will kind of be back-to-back in the rotation and hope for the best, and a guy that has a ton to prove. And he still looks like he has something left in the tank. He's just battled significant injuries to his arm the last couple of seasons. So he's another guy. And then one other guy I haven't really heard talk about too much with the Giants is Clay Holmes. He's on the Yankees this year. He used to be on the Pirates. He's a guy you could throw in late innings, and he's very reliable arm. Year after year, his ERA is in the 2s and 3s. He's a guy that wouldn't probably cost you nearly as much as Tanner Scott. Have to pay him a little bit, but he'd be another guy that would be solid for the Giants, I think.
Yeah.
Like I said,
to
he's
your point on
free.
Walker Bueller, I think a lot of people don't. Yeah. To your point on Walker Bueller, I think a lot of people don't realize this with him. In 2021, he actually cleared 200 innings. Of course, then his arm fell apart afterward, but he threw 207 innings that season of like 2.44 ERA ball. Like he was dominant. And like, I'm not saying he would do that because he probably wouldn't, but you look at his years prior to that, and I mean 2.62 ERA in 18, 3.26 and 19, through 182 innings there. So he's a guy that maybe he gives you 170 innings or something like that of solid ball. I could see like the name I brought up a few times is like Nathan Eovaldi. He's a possibility. I thought Waka was a good option before he signed with KC. I thought that was a really good job by KC to get that deal done. Because I mean, if you told me I could have had Waka for 3 for 51, I'd have taken that in a heartbeat. I felt like that was a really good deal for them. There's a few options out there. If they don't want to go the Snell Burns Fried route, like there's a few options that they could fill in a solid number 2 or 2.5, whatever you want to call them, starter. Like maybe it's not ideal, but they could be good options. And Eovaldi's had a good history in the postseason too. Like that's one thing I do like about him. So.
How funny is it that almost all of the Giants rotation from just as recent as 2 years ago, they're all free agents? Stripling, DeSclafani, Wood, and Cobb, all free agents. I know a lot of them are getting up there in age, but it's just kind of funny to see. It's like, my Lord.
Oh God, I forgot about DeSclafani.
He's out there. How old is he, man? He's like 36, I think.
That dude and his cement mixer slider. I just
PTSD from that pitch, man.
Every game, like you just would watch and be like, I hope this guy, he's going to throw like 4 of those a game, and I hope they just get fouled back. It's like all I could root for.
Yeah, dude.
And
the amount of times he threw that pitch in 0-2 counts, I'm just like, oh my God. Like you said, that's literally a pitch you hope guys are fouling off. Like you're just like, oh, let me steal a strike early in the count with this pitch, 0-0, 1-0. Let me steal a strike. Nope. 0-2 gets taken yard by Mookie Betts on that pitch multiple times.
I'd literally like cover my eyes, bro. Like it was rough. Did not want to watch them.
I never saw it with that guy. Everybody got hyped off of one half of a season that was really solid from him, and then he fell apart in the second half of 2021. Nobody talks about that really, and just thought he was good, but then it was just year after year constant injury excuses for that guy. And I'm like, then why is he pitching? It's the same with Lamont Wade. Why are you in the lineup? You're hurt. I don't want to hear excuses that you're playing poorly because you're hurt, but you're starting almost every game. It's like, what are we doing here?
That was the best because they'd be like, well, he's only 80% healthy. It's like, well, then why is he out there?
Like you can't find a first baseman? Are you kidding me?
And he, honest to God, might have been the slowest non-catcher in baseball. He would hit so many balls that he would put in the gap or down the line or something. He'd have a nice hit. And I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that should be a double. And like he's like not even like making a hard turn. He's just standing on first, like, nah, I'm not even gonna try. It's like, dude, between you and Flores, you might have the worst aggregate speed of any pair in the league. It's just terrible. But yeah, I mean, Uncle Ted says getting Jack Caglione from the Royals would be top number 1. I mean, I don't know if you could trade anyone to them other than Logan Webb to get that guy. I don't think the Giants have anybody in their roster that they could get him with, frankly. Webb's probably the only one.
Yeah.
From a value standpoint.
When do they do the draft lottery for the MLB? Because the Giants have a really good chance at getting like a
Winter meetings.
top 3 or 4 pick
Yeah,
this
isn't it
year.
during
So
winter meetings?
they could absolutely get a stud this year in the draft.
Yeah,
Winter
I mean,
meetings,
maybe
by
they
the
get
way,
lucky.
winter meetings, I believe, start on December 8th, by the way, the 8th through the 11th, if I'm not mistaken. So it's another thing for people asking on when we could see a lot of moves start getting made right around that time. You could see things really pop off.
I still wish we drafted Honeycutt, and I will die on that hill.
Yeah, I liked
I mean, I
Honeycutt
was
a
all
lot.
for the upside.
And I think it was funny that Honeycutt ended up going to the Orioles, I believe, because we were just talking about that on the live last week.
Yeah,
I was saying how he's one of their top prospects, and he'll probably thrive in that system.
December 10th.
December 10th.
Yeah, it is at winter meetings. 2:30 Pacific.
I thought so.
Okay, and they have what,
And
1.9?
while
I mean,
for the
for
first pick,
reference, I think Cleveland and Cincinnati had worst odds last season at moving
yeah,
up.
they were in the teens, I believe, of the lottery, and the Giants are what, like 6th or 7th?
I think they're 9th.
Oh, they're
What they
9th.
finished at.
Someone like that.
Yeah, because I think Oakland doesn't have an opportunity because they finished there multiple years in a row or something like that. And then, I mean, is Chicago? Am I just not seeing Chicago? Maybe Chicago's in the same situation.
The
Yes,
White
they are.
Sox, yeah, they are, yeah.
Yeah, so the Marlins and
So
well,
even regardless of the number 1 pick, the Giants have a really good shot at moving up in the draft. I know we're way far away from there, but just something to keep in mind as far as, these elite prospects go. The Giants could, luck into one of these guys in this year's draft.
ownership needs to start signing superstars. It's like they're not even trying anymore. Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest missed opportunity is there have been several, and this has been the example I've used. This is for me, the biggest whiff in Farhan's tenure. It's obviously hard to get or get star players to come to the Giants, especially hitters. It's always been a problem. But for me, 2022 offseason, right, fresh off of the 107 win season, obviously you lost Posey. I think it was unreasonable to expect Belt and Crawford to duplicate the seasons they had just had. That you knew the team was not going to win 107 games the following year. Like, they were going to take a step back. But that offseason, they had Gossman, who was a free agent and wanted to be in San Francisco, and proceeds to sign an extremely team-friendly deal with Toronto that has turned into an absolute steal. And I don't know, the first 2 years he was a Cy Young candidate, and this year he had a horrible start, but if you look at his second half, he was basically the same guy that he was the first 2 years. So maybe he just had a bad half. We'll see, what the last 2 years of that deal look like. But he was a super, like, I think $22 million a year. It was like 5 for 110. Like, that was super team friendly from a guy that wanted to be in San Francisco. And then the other guy that was on the market that year was Marcus Semien, who he's a San Francisco native that even talked about playing in San Francisco at one point in his career. That would have been an excellent pickup for the offensive side to help, offset some of the offense you were going to lose from Buster retiring. So it's like, it's just tough because it's like that. It's hard for them to get stars, but then there's players out there that, like, there were players that are, star caliber players that wanted to be here, and they both signed very reasonable, affordable deals, and they didn't get either. And that's unacceptable to me. And I don't know if that's ownership or Farhan. I'm not in the room, so I couldn't tell you, but I feel like it's probably a bit of both.
So 2 things for that. One, don't you know the Johnsons are in the real estate business? So you need to come correct with that. And 2, who needs a Marcus Semien when you have a Nick Ahmed? So that's all I'm going to say.
Well, I think we need to look at team building as a whole and understand why Farhan failed so badly at building a consistent winner and really building a foundation, within the 6 years he was here. It's you have these talented players and you just let guys walk because you're so passive and just you're wanting to be cheap because you're terrified of the thought of giving a pitcher a long-term deal other than Logan Webb, who you've had in-house for several years.
Mhm.
It's like you add Gosman, who you got on a cheap deal, go and reward the guy for the last couple years and look at the guy and see that he can give you innings and stabilize the front end of your rotation. The next year you go and get Carlos Rodon. You had a chance to either trade him and get something out of him. Yes, they got Whitman. We don't know what that's going to turn into. But ultimately, you really got nothing out of Rodon other than the draft pick, and you didn't keep him around. Now you have Snell. He might walk too. And it's like you look right there and you could have had a deep rotation. And then guess what? You don't have to be afraid to trade your prospects, and you actually maximize their value by going and trading them while they're a high-end prospect and a lot of teams covet them. And then you go bring in other vets, and then that's how you build out your position player group. And then you're not in this position where you have holes all up and down your lineup. So it's just like, when you're building a team, you don't need to do it all in 1 year, but you need to look each year, how can I get better at a select few positions and go from there. You have the money and the resources to do it, but you're just being extremely conservative. So I think that's why having a guy like Manassian, who's, a lot more focused on, trade acquisitions, I think that's just one of those huge areas that Farhan just completely neglected year after year. The guy just never really made a ballsy move. And that's why they are where they are. And it's like, you don't need to spend crazy amounts of money like the Dodgers to get better.
Can I present something real quick? I think it's a picture that I think is very fitting to describe Farhan with his prospects and when he wanted to trade him. Can I?
See, Dan gains these powers to present things on his screen, and he just can't help himself now.
Can you see this?
No,
same hair and everything. That's him holding the prospects. Doesn't want to flip them. That's Farhan right there, guys.
it's fantastic.
That's all.
Who has more hair, that cat or Farhan?
Probably the cat. My mom has 3 of those cats, dude, and they're like little peaches, so they got a little bit of hair.
Yeah, a little fuzz. God, that's hilarious. All right, well, I think we've given everybody ample time to subscribe and drop comments in here. We are going to go ahead and get the giveaway going. Give me one moment to pull this up for everybody.
Drum roll.
Just stuff away. If I can get the page up. All right, so we're going to go ahead and boom. I'm leaving it blank. Anybody can, any comments? We only had 16 people in here. God, it feels like we had more than that. But you guys are the lucky 16 that got entered. We're going to go ahead and flip the draw. Whoever wins, we'll figure out how you're reach out to
before
us.
You do that, do they have to be in the stream as we speak? Is that what these 16 are? Is it because it's possible?
I think we have a lot more people than 16 in here right now, right?
We should.
No, we do, but this is all that commented. That's how you get entered.
Yeah, everyone get your comments in. Last chance.
Yeah, we'll give you like 2 more minutes if you're watching. And we have like 50. Yeah, Rob says there's like 50 watching. Mine's showing 85. There's a few people over on X. I'll wait now. It just went up to 17. Yeah, if you're watching, drop your comments in there right now. I'll give you guys like another 2 minutes. We'll do it at 10:15. If you're on X, flip over to YouTube. The link should be on the YouTube. Like there should be a link to click over here. Pop in there and
See,
I think comments can get entered.
I think they have to be in it at the same time that they comment. They can't comment and leave. That's why that's the thing right there. So yeah, if you commented early and then you just haven't talked for like the last 30 minutes and you like left the stream, now's your chance to comment again so you can be entered officially. So everyone say something.
Yeah. We'll just keep it up. And while you're at it, like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all the stuff.
Exactly.
In all seriousness, we appreciate all you guys. We are up to, I don't know, we're probably about, it's gone up a ton the last week or so. Like I'm at like almost 1,080 now. So big thanks to you guys. Big thanks to, Dan over at NorCal. I know they're live right now, so he's not watching right this second, but a big shout out to him. Big shout out to Casey for giving us his time on Wednesday. If you haven't watched that interview, it was over on NorCal simulcast here as well. Go check out that. He's a bit of a character. It's hilarious. Super fun guy. It was just a great chance to talk to him. Might have another player on the horizon that will probably be over there, but I'm not going to say who because we can't confirm that yet. And then we have a few guests joining us on our show. I don't know. I probably shouldn't say who because we don't have it confirmed yet date wise, but I've had a few people that are confirmed that are going to join us at some point.
Some local media members will just leave it vague like that you guys will all know.
Yeah. Not Tom Tolbert though. I'm sorry.
And not Grant Cohn.
Oh God.
We don't buy subs on this channel, guys. No Grant Cohn here.
If I was buying subs, it would not have taken me a year to get to 1,000. Let's just put it out.
Low budget.
Low budget. All right, I think it's time we run it, fellas.
All right. We got it up to 24. So a few of you guys came back in here, got entered. We're going to do the draw, and then you can choose what you are going to take. So drum roll. I don't know if this makes any noise, but
it did. Good job.
It did.
Hey, Joaquin.
Congrats, man.
Congrats, brother.
Congrats, man. So, for those of you that have not looked at the options, Joaquin, shoot us a chat in there. I don't know if you've looked at the options. I'm going to turn around. Hold on for a second.
And by the way, guys, we're doing one giveaway per week. So we got 3 prizes total. So you have your choice between the first prize tonight, and then next week we got another one. So the winner next week will get to pick between the 2 remaining, and then the week after that you'll get the remaining last gift. So
yeah. So Joaquin, you have your choice. There are 3 possible items. Ricky, it's hard to see it, but I know with the blurred card. Ricky's got himself a Patrick Bailey signed card. He knows more details about what the specifics on that. Dan's got a Barry Bonds patch. I can't really. I think you said it was a game worn 2003, and then we also you're not going to be able to see this probably on this with the it's a bright signed Bryce Eldridge ball. So I'll send it with the case and everything. So you got some options. Let us know kind of what you want to go with there, and we'll get in touch. I think you've actually messaged me before on X, so you can feel free to just message me there, and we'll get the deets, and we'll get that all get that over to you. Should we put the pressure on them? You got to make the decision now.
Joaquin, you have 2 minutes to make a decision, or else you're banned. Imagine.
we're gonna ban and redraw.
I'm just kidding. No, plenty of time, dude. No rush. Just message Cody whenever you get a chance.
Yep. Yeah. You just got to do it before the next live show. because I got to be able to tell people what's left.
So you got a week, bro. I hope that's plenty of time.
Yeah. Yeah, take your time, man. But I appreciate all you guys. If there's anything else you guys want us to touch on before we dip out of here, yeah, Mark says Jeopardy 30-second timer.
Imagine.
I get copyrighted so hard for that. Like, oh, you want to monetize this video? Yeah, nope.
Likewise, bro. Appreciate the support.
Yeah, we appreciate you, man.
Appreciate all
I
you
know,
guys.
Joaquin, you've mentioned in the past that you enjoy listening while you're doing your studies and stuff in school. So I appreciate you, man. Keep up the hard work. And yeah, I mean, you guys got anything to add going for the rest of the night, or?
I'm looking forward to sleeping. That's about it.
Yeah.
Your boy's
Mr.
tired.
60-hour week over there.
Yeah.
At least, yeah.
Yeah. No, good. You're good. You're a good son, man. It's it's awesome what you're doing for your dad. So
Appreciate that.
Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, we're gonna wrap it up then, and hope you guys all have a great night. Hopefully the Giants do something in the next 6 days so we can actually, have some really fun, actual content to talk about and not just weekly hypotheticals, because that's kind of how it feels at the moment. We will do a live show next Friday. The following week, I'm thinking we'll probably skip because it is Thanksgiving week. And the more I think about that, it's like, with the holiday and everything, we'll probably skip that one. Everybody enjoy your time with your family, go spend it with them. And then we will do the last live show giveaway. I mean, we do live shows every week, but we'll do the last giveaway the following week. So more I think about it, more I'm thinking just skip Thanksgiving week.
Yeah. And I actually might be out of town for my birthday too. So
for Thanksgiving or the following week?
No, my birthday's Thanksgiving weekend. So
perfect.
Oh shit.
And then the following week we can do the following week, I think, will be like the week before winter meetings. Might be able to talk a little bit about that. Yeah. So
plenty of time. Yeah, yep. Eric, one was today, but we have 2 more giveaways left. So you still got plenty of time and chances to get into those.
I feel for you, man. We literally just did it like 5 minutes ago. we kept trying to give the Bueller calls to try and get more people, but there are going to be 2 more. That ended up being the vote, was to do 1 a week for 3. So there's going to be 2 more before we wrap it up. So you got a couple other opportunities, and I'll answer this one before I go. I mean, if the Cardinals would take it, absolutely, but I think Helsley would get quite a bit more than Yaz. And
I'd trade Yaz and Wade for a ham sandwich. So, and Rob, cheers, brother. Appreciate that. Yeah, and thanks, Jeff. Likewise, appreciate that.
Yeah.
But yeah, cheers, mates.
All right, guys, take it easy. Thanks for joining us. We'll catch you next week.
Why did I say cheers, mates? What was that?
Sound like you're from London.
I'm that tired, bro. I'm ready to go to bed.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Night, guys.
Thanks, guys.